There we go. The recording is on. It's good to see everybody for January the first. I was talking to Cara and Julie. It feels like it's been a while since we had these, hasn't it? It's been I feel like we're a brand new year, brand new time. It's going to be very exciting. We're talking about branding today. I know that in our experience, as authors and as I mean, I'm in the author realm. I'm a mentor and different things, and I know that many times us as authors, we have this feeling of what branding is, and it is very can be very scary or very frustrating of having to promote ourselves and I will say that it is not as I used to think I was a bad marketer. Um, but then little by little, I'm like, okay, you know what? I know how to share myself. I know how to solve a problem. I know how to do these things. I'm learning that actually it's not that complicated, not that huge deal. And so hopefully we're going to just have an open conversation today, kind of about marketing and branding, and just hopefully demystify kind of what all that is. And so we call this the conversation today, the heart of branding. um, we unfortunately only did not have Marilyn today. She had to duck out for something that we're praying for her, praying for peace, and I think that she's doing okay, but she had to just kind of drop out. So, but we have Cara here. Hello, Cara,
hmm
and
Yeah,
go
you
ahead.
want me to jump in? Okay, actually, I'll get Jesse introduced just in case, because there's a
Oh,
couple new faces. And so Jesse Rivas, did I say it right? Me and him butcher each other.
Rivas. Yeah, we always say
Rivas, we butcher
Rivas
each other's name.
alone.
We've
Yeah,
only known each other forever, but we're on first name basis still.
yeah.
If he gets my first name right, I'm Cara, not Cara. If he says Cara, it's wrong.
I do say Cara sometimes, and forgive me. Yeah.
But me and him and Marilyn have been working together for a couple years now behind the scenes, trying to basically, it's almost like a threefold cord is not easily broken. Our brains approach this stuff a little bit different and communicate it a little different as far as like marketing, publicity, platform, actual sales versus the brand versus the ministry. It's kind of a whole muddle of stuff, and we're just trying to sit on it before the Lord, have a little bit of clarity come to it. And we've actually had some classes, really solid classes, come out with some really good fruit, and I'm pretty excited about that. This is not the class. This is just part of CCW, which we're super proud and fond of. And I'm kind of a billboard for our writing conference. I love it. I get people to go all the time because there's nothing better than when you find your people. So Jesse has some chops. If you personally want a personal coach, that's the overall easy way to say it. But he's got a bag full of tricks, and he has lots of things. And he can actually figure out from one interview with you. He can figure out how best he can help you. But he does have layers and layers in his toolbox. Julie does too. I know she does. So I am I'm a writer. I have 4 books published. I just this my news just this last week. I haven't even signed my contract. I got an offer for a second contract with Whitefire. So Whitefire is a mid-sized press, um, and so I am in the hopper as a creative alongside all of you. And that's actually one of the things I get to bring to the table is that I'm experiencing what it is to hear a word like branding and try to understand it from nothing, right? From what you have at your from your work or your own personal history, which may or may not have any helps for that. So the first thing I wanted to do is just demystify branding. When we talk about branding, branding is one of those big words that comes along in a conference or in teaching, and it sounds really big like platform. So we want to talk about it in a way that makes it so that you can break it down into bite-sized pieces and actually enjoy it. Branding is supposed to be enjoyed because branding is basically your voice outside of your creative expression of writing. It is you. It is your voice and how you come across the echo of you in every place. It's on your website, it's on your social media, it's interactions if you're in person, if you're talking to your family members, if you're talking to people who love you at church. It's all of that rolled into one, and it becomes this like a like and there's different ways to do it. Like Roger, he says he's writing crime a suspense crime book. Well, he's probably, hopefully, not practicing his techniques at home and working up to a murder, right? We're hoping that's not the case inside of this. However, he already told us in the little bit of pre-talk that we had ahead of time that he set his book in Seattle because he wanted to get to know the area. So that means he has a little interest in Seattle, in the area, and that is something he would talk about happily, and that could become part of his brand because it's part of who he is. So I think the idea of what I need to say about what brand is it's you. So
Mm.
instead of it being a real formal, this is a big homework assignment, we've got to really research and study what we imprint we want to be, it can actually become a little bit closer to home and more personal. And a lot of times, a group like this is really good because your brand is often very familiar to you and therefore harder to define. But when you're sitting in a group like this and you're kind of forced to focus and think about it, it's a little bit less difficult because you're like, oh, I think this way all the time. So I'm going to tell you my brand just because I want you to hear me say it because this is kind of where we're going with you. Now we're going to talk more specifically about a little bit of how you come up with this. But the whole point of a class like this is that your little pencil is writing up notes and I'm triggering your thoughts and momentum toward your own personal journey of what your brand is. So I could make it sound real hoity-toity like an interview, but that's not how I am. Cara doesn't ever sound like she's formally memorized something. I sound like the girl who's going to sit down and pull up a cup of coffee and chit-chat your ear off and make it really hard for you to leave because she's going to keep telling stories, right? But my brand is when people read my books, which I write historical romance, Christian fiction, I do Pacific Northwest settlers between 1840s and 1885. So that's the type of books and the genre I read. But my brand is I want someone to pick up my book and read it and get a complete escape from nowadays life. I want the stress of the hard thing that they're facing to melt away, that they would truly escape, that they would get given hope and encouragement, and that when they're done reading their book, the residue of my book would make them feel like Jesus was close, that he was listening to them, and that he was talking to them in the way that they can hear. So that is my brand. So when I'm doing stuff on my website, I want it to be hope and encouragement. So that means I'm not going to put like potentially Roger, I'm not going to use moody colors from a rainy setting where a killer might hang out, you know, like tension and suspense. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be a little pop of color, something warm. My font is going to be friendly. I actually stick my face up there because most of the time people meet me and they don't remember my name. So I want them to see my face and remember. And so my face, your face, is part of your brand.
It's Cara, right? It's,
Kara.
I'm making a joke.
Oh, I never know because you're okay. So
I
Jesse,
don't know.
Jesse's going to bring some mechanics, and then I'm going to come back and talk about nuances. So this is again how we work well together. So those of you who like A to B to C, you're going to love this next part. So Jesse, you do your part now.
Sure, sure. Thank you. And as you know, this is Cara. She is absolutely amazing. I was going to introduce you, but you introduced yourself, which is
Oh, sorry.
fantastic. No, that's okay. This
I
is
thought
fantastic.
Marilyn was supposed to, so I.
No, no, no. This is good. So let me go ahead and set the presentation. I love it, and so you guys are hoping to roll the punches with us. It's a lot of fun. So here, like she was saying, I'm kind of the mechanical person. So we'll just kind of get into a little bit of the presentation. We worked this up the last minute, so it's not going to necessarily be. I mean, it's great, but we wanted to just kind of keep this open-ended as well. So. This is a heart of branding. We coined this the secret sauce of sharing your work without feeling like you're selling. We have this scripture: no one hides a light, no one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, the lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. And this is just kind of the heart that we want to bring to the table because when I always say, you know, when we believe in ourselves, when we believe that God is what God has given us, then of course we're going to share with other people. Um, my famous thing that I always tell people is that if you had the cure for cancer, would you not tell somebody? You know, and so it's almost like you would probably shout it from the rooftops. If you had a friend that was dying of cancer and you had the cure for cancer or any disease, you would be like, okay, I have this for you. You really need it. And they say, oh, no, I don't think I want it. No, no, no. I have this for you. You're going to want this. That really what it comes down to branding and marketing in a lot of ways is that if you believe that God has given you something, of course you're going to want to share with others. And I know there's a lot of stigma behind it, but we want to go ahead and just kind of like take you through some practical steps on how to go through that. So this is us. We this is this is all three of us. We have an eclectic group of people. I was introducing Cara. She already introduced herself a lot already, but yeah, she is an amazing firecracker. She's a fire hose, which is wonderful. She is a walking billboard, and I will say. You don't have to be like her to be a good marketer. She is extroverted and she is fun, and she is an amazing encourager, but am a bit more reserved and less extroverted, and I feel like anybody introverted extroverted can be a good marketer. She has written 4 books, and you have what, 3 more on the way, a contract for 3 more. She writes a circle romance. She's a champion of others, and yeah, she's always bragging on other people. She doesn't just publish books, she actually invests in authors. And so she has a powerful story and she is she's just an amazing person. And I know you can figure that out for yourself. And so we're happy to have her share her secret sauce in this journey. Um, Okay, let's go. This slide right here is the problem. I was going to have an amazing picture, but I didn't get it yet. So the problem that we've kind of came up with is that does it sound familiar that you get a word from God to write a book, and you're faithful to write that book, but then you get rejected from traditional publishers or expect to publish it on Amazon and it just falls flat. And that happens so often to people where like God told me to do this. Why did God not, if he guides, he provides, right? And we hear time and time again that authors publish their book, whether it's the first book or the eighth book, and then you publish it and it doesn't do as well as you want. And because in a lot of ways, unfortunately, no one necessarily wants what you have to offer just without knowing about it. And so we want to say there's a solution to this where if you actually talk about your branding, it's when you're able to actually be authentic and be yourself and sharing yourself with other people, then they actually know that you exist. And one thing I've also heard from different people, like Jim Rubart, he always said, bring connection over contracts. And so when you find your people, like Kara said, you find your people, you find your message, you find who you are and what you're bringing to the table before you go off and try to sell your book. So today we're going to go ahead and take 3 different steps here to try to break down branding is a huge topic and it's not going to be perfect, but we're going to break down branding in 3 different ways. First being your book's purpose, second being your connection style, and third being your passionate pitch. And this is a way of sharing with people who you are and what you bring to the table. So the first step we have here is your book's purpose. Do you want to say anything before I go to the book's purpose, Kara? Or
I would like at some point for you to use your own stuff as an example so they can hear them applied. If that makes any sense. If you can
my
do
own
that.
stuff? Tell me more about that.
Okay. When you write your books, you have done this for yourself. So inside
Hmm.
of your books, your brand, I guess you could just do what I did and talk about your brand for a second as it applies to your as you're laying it out, the problems being solved.
Yeah. Well, so for me, yeah, and like, as Kara shared about her brand, my brand, I took a long time, and we're not really going into this per necessarily, but I took a long time really realizing what my personal brand is, and it's good to take a little bit of a side tangent. Um, we've done different classes of your life theme, and um, I know that Jim Rubart has done this thing where he says, "You tell me your top three movies, I can tell you the theme of your life." We're not going to go into that because we already had a class on that, but from that, I found that my top three movies were like things like Lord of the Rings, The Greatest Showman, and for me, I realized that I love epic adventures, I love quests, I love teams, I love groups, and so these common themes of these movies that I love, I'm realizing that my brand really is bringing people together on an epic journey. And so for me, a lot of my books are that way. I co-author a lot with people. I co-write um, uh, classes. And so I'm kind of my brand, I feel like is championing other people and bringing power to them. And so I have I write a series of books, but I co-author it with somebody else, and I bring the truth inside of those series of books, and she brings the heart. And we just recently released our eighth book. My main co-author, Alicia, we released our eighth book, Ripple, and it's looking like it's becoming a movie. So we're very excited about that. We have a purpose to, yeah, thank you, Julie. We have a purpose to really bring authentic story and to change the world through actually knowing who you are and seeing God on the page. And so if that is kind of our mission for our book, which is kind of leads really well into the book's purpose. But my personal brand and my personal mission is to champion other people. And that's why I'm a mentor. That's why I'm a coach. And so it's a little bit of a different brand. It does bleed into authorship. I know eventually when I run my own personal books, I have a superhero series, I have a dystopian fantasy series and everything. And so it's all about people coming together. And I'm pretty close to releasing my personal first book, but that's who I am. Um, so your book's purpose, it kind of brings into the first stage of what I would consider branding is knowing kind of why you do what you do. And so your book's purpose, I believe, comes into three different categories. How you have been inspired by your book, the connection to your readers, and the transformation that you want to bring. Um, the quote that I keep bringing my mentor into this. James L. Rupert writes this quote called, "You don't create a brand, you discover it." And so we're going to work on, and hopefully we do a little bit of an interaction here about discovering your brand from the fruit of what you want to come out of your book. So I'm going to go ahead and put this next slide on the table, and we want to go ahead and ask you a few questions. Um, this is this is an activity for us to kind of discover. Um, why did you write your book? Who is your target audience and why should they care? And what pain points does your book solve for your reader? So the first one is why did you write this book? Is that think about this. Think about why are you passionate about your subject matter? And if you want to write this down, we'll have a time of sharing before we go into the next step. But I would just take some time to write down, like, because as many of us probably know, if you're an author, it's hard work. It's a long, and we were talking to Jane the other day about this, is why even do that, right? Right, Jane? It was like, what's the joy of it? Like why even do this? Um, and so I would write down why did you write this book? What personal experiences or beliefs make this book meaningful to you? Or if you have multiple books, like why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself through all this time and challenge? What is your inspiration for writing? And then next, who is your target audience and why should they care? Like, who are you writing to? And so I would write that down as another question. And the it's easy to think about target audiences, but I want to even go as far as who is the one person that you're writing to. If you can picture an ideal reader in front of you, who is this person? What do they need? Like, why do they care about your book? What makes them want to read it? And so I just take some time to write that down. And then finally, what pain point does your book solve for that reader? So how are you promising to transform their lives? So we don't have to take the time to, I don't really necessarily want to take time to wait on this, but I want to hear from you guys of anybody who wants to share one of these three things. Why did you write this book or series of books? Who is your target audience? Why should they care? And what pain points are you solving? I'm going to go ahead and should I keep this slide? I'm not going to
Yeah,
keep this
keep it
slide.
up because I'm going to talk about the part. So Marilyn usually she comes in here with some secret sauce on how to apply your brand inside the parts of your author platform that are a little bit bigger and louder. Actually, Jesse, I want to see people's faces. So if you can
Yeah,
go.
exactly. So take these write these things down, and then I want to go to everyone's faces, and I'd love for people to share one, two, or all three of these. We're gonna have a little bit of
Yeah,
time.
I'll help facilitate getting it so that people can talk about it. But so if you notice when Jesse was talking, he was talking about individually your book because your book is actually the seed of your brand. I'm an avid gardener. If I go into, I just put some dirt out with my grandson this morning. We're going to start some seeds this next week that are going to come into my garden this year. If I plant a tomato seed, I'm getting tomatoes. So when you guys write a book and you have a certain kind of book, you're expecting a fruit of a certain kind of book. And then when you're doing brand, you're going to back up from that one particular plant and then look at all of the things that you've kind of planted through your life that you've tended and see how the fullness of your brand applies to your it's in the platform. It's the filter of your life. A couple of years ago, Terry Gillespie talked to us at the CCW, sorry, and he said the Lord does not waste anything. And he was talking to us as intelligent people who are interested in many, many things, who have jobs and careers, who've had easy and rough things happen to us, who've had big successes and hard sorrows, like all of that stuff. The Lord doesn't waste anything. And he was just encouraging us that everything we are, if the good, the bad, and the ugly turn towards the Lord, becomes our expression of worship. And he just doesn't waste any of it. And in some ways, that's the same thing with brand. The Lord doesn't waste anything up. So you get to come into your brand, but you also can decide certain things your brand is not. So when Marilyn starts talking, she will introduce the
Cool.
public platforms like the social medias and all the things your vlog, your blog, your website, your newsletter, all the things that come up with a book launch, this and that, because you're going to kind of want an undertone of you that touches on all of that. You don't want to just have a one-off. And that's why you've probably been to conferences before where they say be really careful if you talk about controversial things online or if you talk about your politics. If you're a feel-good author who's trying to be an imprint of hope and encouragement, you don't want to get out there and blast, have a temper tantrum on social media. Like that's not what I want to do. However, if you're writing a political thriller that had to do with things that are in the media right now, there might be room for you to do that. That would be part of your brand. So I'm not telling you no, but I'm telling you to start taking a look at the things that you say yes to, but also the things that you say no to. Because just like back in the day when you were picking a spouse or even a job, sometimes it's almost easier to define what you're not than what you are. And then again in the group think somebody else might see something bigger than you. I happen to know Marcy. Marcy's a children's book writer. She's had some really good close calls with the publishing industry and has had some frustrations with that too, because close calls mean there's still a no. But at the same time, if I take her and what I know about her, children's books author is just a small piece of that perspective. Her heart really comes alive when she's talking about the navigating for children, wanting to protect them from the moral and immoral chaos that's coming into them and inundating them in the secular arena as well as places where the young are defenseless, almost like it's coming in under the radar. So she really wants, she has a protective heart for the content, not just for the fact that it's children's books. Like that is her brand. So
Yeah.
everything that she should be writing in her newsletters and this and that should feed the idea of standing up and protecting those kids and making sure. And sometimes she's going to do that by saying to the Christian industry, let's protect our kids, let's do this, be watchful for this, or something in her version, in her voice. But then in the secular market, she can't say that. They're going to run away. She just has to do it and she has to be it. And that is therefore her brand. And so, is Shannon still in here? It's just, you guys, there's a lot of you. Shannon, are you still in here? Anyways, I'm going to quote you. So that's why I'm calling your name out. She was talking to me about her brand. Actually, she was talking about the question of who her audience is, which is actually inside the question you're supposed to be answering now. Who is your perfect audience? And she kind of sheepishly said, I think I'm my perfect audience, which which sounds so funny because it's like a small way of like you're thinking, yeah, like I wrote what I want to read, which my Karen Ball was my first agent back in the day. And I was really overwhelmed. I'm like, I had a really good first impression at a Oregon Writers Conference back in 2013, CCW now. And I actually landed an agent at the first time I ever did anything out, which does not happen. It had to be the Lord because it just doesn't work that way anymore. But in the process, I asked this agent, I'm like, how do I know I'm going to write another book the way that's something they like, the same way they like the first one? She said, did you write what you like? I said, yeah. She goes, so write what you like. And if you write what you like, they'll like it. And it kind of stuck, which that's actually a little bit brand where you're with Shannon. Shannon writes really intellectually mind bending, awesome. I don't even, Shannon, I get stuck every time trying to describe yours. It's like Christian Science, except for that's not what it is. It's like, but but her newsletter goes out to very highly educated people who understand all of the sciences behind things like evolution and the biblical times and all of that. Like she's smarty pants, smart among smarty pants. So her brand is her because she's genius smart. She is up in that zone. So she is her perfect brand. Does that mean everyone's going to like her books and everybody's going to follow her books? No. She needs to find the ones that are as interested in the crazy trains of story and thought and time bending processes that she gets a hold of. And
Yeah.
she'll find them, but she'll find them one person at a time, one conversation at a time, one newsletter. Maybe the newsletter hits more than one at a time. Maybe that's an echo of multiple people. But every single one of us has that. That's why we got to define brand as a person. You're the brand face to face, and her idea that she is her best audience is actually very, very, very honest and right answer.
Yeah.
And 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 it can be difficult to tease that out because you kind of want everybody to read your book and everybody to like your book. But it's almost better if you can narrow the field and know exactly who you fit.
It is much better because the key you say is you write to everybody, you write to nobody, and so the famous thing, and whether you like it or not, Harry Potter was written to 12-year-old boys, and everyone in the world reads Harry Potter because everyone wants to feel like a 12-year-old boy sometime with adventure and quirkiness and whatever. But because you can still write to a target audience and still have other people read it, but. Yeah, so good stuff. So let's open the floor a little bit. I don't know if you want to, if you know how to do the reactions down below, you can kind of do like a raise your hand. But I'd love to hear maybe two or three people on this first section before we move on. Just kind of one, two, or all three questions. Share. So, um, yeah, Karen, Chanel, you want to share? Yeah, could you raise your hand?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm writing a middle school book. And the reason I want to write this book is because me as a Christian teenager didn't make the connection about what in the Bible could have helped me through adolescence. Like I totally didn't. I went to church, but I never made those two connections, even though I know I also want to write for adults. This is kind of my passion project, which I know is going to be harder to publish, but it's the one I want to finish first.
Great. And so you said you know your target audience is
Middle school.
yeah.
It's, the main character is a girl. So And it could be my target audience also could be moms,
Yeah.
in that, they may read my stuff in my devotions and my blog and be like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe will write stuff that my kids can read, or my
And
daughters.
and what about the transformation? What do you want? How do you want to change their lives?
I want kids to know that the Bible is alive and active
Yeah.
today, and that it is applicable. And growing up's hard, I mean, and I think they've got it way worse than we had it. There's just so much with social media. The world's telling them so many different things. And I want kids to know they're special. God made them. They are, they were knit in the womb. They are they are amazing, and I want to
Right.
give them better self-esteem.
Love it. I love that, Karen. Thank you for sharing. Okay, I think all right, Janet, I think you're next. And if we don't get to everybody this first time, we'll have other opportunities the next two sections, and we can have everybody put in the chat to kind of their stuff as well. But let's hear from Janet next.
Hi, everybody. So I write about prayer and more specifically prayer walking, and that is my brand. And 8 of my nonfiction books have all been about prayer. But one thing that I wanted to share about how I kind of discovered that was I took a marketing course from Alice Kreider some years ago. And Alice suggested that if you didn't know your brand or how people were perceiving you, to actually go on your social media and just scroll through, see what are your posts, how are they focused, what are you saying, what is your message there? And I realized one day, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm the weather girl. That's all I talk about is the weather here in the Sierra. And I thought that's got to change. So I've just learned to be more intentional on a daily basis about focusing something relating to prayer and God's word.
Love it. Thank you, Janet. It's a good information. Okay, Jane, you have something to say, Kara?
Yeah, because I still want to hear from more people, so I'm not cutting that off. But
Yeah.
sometimes when you're thinking of brand, you also want to think of it in this way. We are, according to Scripture, we're triune beings made in the image of a triune God, God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We are a spirit. We have a soul. We live in a body. That's what we are.
Yeah.
So in some ways, your brand is going to come through the filter, the lens of all three of those places. So you're going to have some of your brand that's spiritually deep and a little more discerning. And it might be like what I was saying with Marcy, where you're not really shoving it in people's faces. It's a little bit passive, but you're still doing it with great purpose, and that might be something you think about in your newsletter. What is the serious piece, the soul, the spirit piece, where you really want something important to get it communicated? Then you're going to have the soul. The soul is the thinking, the philosophy. Hello, my writing friends are the most interesting people ever. And then the body is, to me, it's sort of in the same zone. It's what you are personally interested in. Like that's what touches you in the home. So pay attention to your rabbit holes. When you go on research rabbit holes or you go on interest rabbit holes, figure out if any of those cross over into your brand and become a conversation where somebody can get to know you and potentially get to know your book.
Yeah.
Okay, back to hearing from somebody else.
Let's go to Jane now. You want to share, Jane?
Well,
And then, yeah.
I had a question about this transformation part because I write fiction and I'm kind of taking a branch off into writing both romance and then romantic suspense. I don't really expect my readers to be transformed. And so I guess, like my question is that absolutely necessary? Because I'm writing for entertainment.
I I have that
That's
experience. That's me. I was telling Jesse. So this week, my fourth book came out, finished my contract in September. This week, I had a person who's read my book. So they are my reader, they are my audience, they already have bought into quote unquote my brand. And I have asked myself that question you just asked so many times. And that's when I boiled it down to I actually want them to be entertained. I want them to escape reality. I want them to disappear from this. Life is filled with crap sometimes, and I want them to be able to disappear from it. So, what happened though is this sweet lady, she came up to me and she had tears in her eyes and her face. And my books, if they make you, it will make you feel good cry probably more than sorrow cry, right? That's what I'm trying to do. but she was emotional, and I'm like, what's going on? And she had read all four of my books out loud to her sister, who has been very ill over the last 4 years, and she just lost her sister on the 12th of this month, and she just finished reading my four books. So my books were a place of lighthearted recreation between them during a very sorrowful season. It was exactly my brand. And
Yeah.
she told me that the reason that they picked my books is because it reminded them of their farm girl childhood. They had pigs, they had horses, they had this, they had that, right? So it does your Jesus told stories of all kinds of things that don't seem like super spiritually important topics, and yet his nature is in the pages. His nature's in the cracks. And that's what we're hoping to do, is draw him into the cracks of what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So to answer your question, Jen, and yeah, we'll get to Patricia, then we'll go on to the next stage so we can have some time to finish this out. But I would consider that transformation. I feel like that it's beautiful that like yeah, you can write fiction. I mean, I write fiction as well, and the people come to me and say, "Hey, it's not just necessarily just an entertainment, but they say, your book made me cry." I'm like, "Well, that's why I do what I do." It's like I made that up, but it's like it changed their lives, and even if it's just like entertainment, like you said, and escape, like Kara is saying, it's that to me is joy. That to me is a transformational thing, and of course, a good caveat of all this is that these are quote unquote rules that may or not be right, and you can break the rules if you're doing it intentionally. And so this is just a scaffolding to help you know. But if you're like, hey, no, I know my branding, and I want to not transform people, if that's what you believe, I still think joy and escape is transformation in my own personal thing. But if there's a belief system that like, what, I just want to entertain, then great, you know who you are and you know your branding. So um cool. So Patricia, did you want to say something? We do want to move on to our next steps, but and did you want to you had your hand raised. I don't know if you
Yeah,
have.
do you want to wait and see if we have time?
Yeah, I think we'll wait for the if you do something at the end, we'll move on to our next little bit, and then we'll keep on going. We might have some time at the end, okay? Okay, cool. So let me go ahead and back to sharing, and move on to the next piece. And this is gonna be Maryland's piece. This is gonna be our connection style, but I think that Kara and I can help with this. We weren't gonna necessarily have uh, a slide or an activity for this, but it's like now that, and you can jump in here if you want, Kara, but like now that once you understand kind of like what you are offering people, the next step is how you want to connect with them. And branding is who you are, and marketing is a way to connect with others, and how you want to engage with your readers. This is through your newsletters, your website, through social media, and it's really just being authentic with who you are and finding people who are similar. If you do this correctly, you will naturally find the people who like your sauce. And I've heard this from another person who says that he says find your 1,000 people who love you. If all you need as a writer is 1,000 people who love you and buy everything that you have to sell, as long as you can sell, as long as you can sell $100 a year as long as you can produce $100 a year of merchandise, then you'll have $100,000, because 100 people times 1,000, and that's enough for you to support you and your family. I know it's a big ask, but you can do that with products and books and different things. But you don't need, my point is, you don't need the millions. You just need the small group of people who love you and want to champion you. And so whether that is, launch teams, and this is what Marilyn was going to say. She's like, I've been on many launch teams for many different authors, and I can picture their style without any problem. I know if I mentioned one, you would know right away who they are. And she had some notes on here about hiking trees, cute bears, national postcards, and so it's the and she had something that she was going to share about jewelry, and I forgot. Do you remember what that was? That she was going to share something about jewelry, Kara? And I don't know if you remember that one, um, but anyway, so the questions we want to ask here is, what is my style, and what kind of connection do you want from the readers? Emotional. what feelings do you want to evoke in your readers? And these are things you can just write down. We may or may not have some time to sharing about this, but so we want to get onto the third step. But think about this. What feelings do you want to invoke in your readers?
Okay, I want to add.
Yeah,
So
go
a
ahead.
lot of times with the social media stuff as writers and what I've witnessed about being around a whole ton of you is that there's a duty to doing social media. It's the marketing checkbox and we want to get in there and we want to check the box and get out. But I would challenge that and remind you that your marketing is actually people. And if even one person slows down and takes in what your content is, it might matter for their life. It's how many times do you hear of crazy stories where somebody's like one person called them or one person posted this or whatever. So not that everything has to be super duper life or death kind of a thing, but just don't forget that social media is also people. We're talking about your branding is you and your voice and your name. But when you get out there and you put your brand on, your rose colored glasses, this is what I want. Cara has hope and encouragement glasses on, and I want to give people a sense that Jesus knows them. So, is that coming across in my website, in my newsletter, in my socials? And it doesn't always have to be serious, but I can tell you there's certain things that I don't do very good at or don't want to do. And they don't always have to do with the big no-nos, like being careful not to start arguments over politics. No, one of the things some people are really, really good at starting little have you ever seen somebody who writes a post and it's just one silly little question and they get like 50 to 100 interactions and people are totally entertained and it's like popping like popcorn. They're like, this is interesting and funny, haha, remember this, remember this. Or you get somebody who's like, this experience happened to me and it's very sobering, and then they have all of these interactions of people telling about their own experiences. I don't do very good at some of that. Like I do stuff that, but I'm always like, okay, I only really ever get one or two engagement, and I'm not going to complain about that because that's what the Lord brings to me. And usually that makes me slow down and pay attention to the one or two instead of having to try to figure out how to pay attention to 50 or 100. Does that make sense? But
Mhm.
then at the same time, there's people who will do like character interviews or different things like that, which I have seen people have tons of response naming a dog or naming a horse in their book, which is great. I don't tend to slow down on that stuff. Other people do. But that's where I say your brand. Um if you're an introvert and you're having a hard time getting out there because it's difficult that way, or if you feel duty, if it feels like a knot of work, then I'm going to encourage you to do something that you enjoy. Figure out the part of your brand that goes to the public that you enjoy. Do something that makes you want to go there and spend
Mhm.
time doing that. And then with the introvert piece, I want to. My husband said that one of his first bosses, when he was a teacher back in the day, told him to assume that people like you. And I feel like I needed to say that tonight. That feels important that I'm supposed to say that, to assume people like you. When you're doing your social media and your brand and your book, you're putting your book stuff out there, instead of assuming nobody wants to hear it, assume that they like you and that they want to hear it. So again, that's part of your brand. You're going to put that on in your glasses that you're going to when you go to put something out there. Um, okay. Um,
Yeah. So this is to add to that, just be thinking about the connection style. What kind of colors do you want to portray? Warm and friendly. What kind of tones that you want to bring, whether that's classical or romantic. And this is
suspense thriller or
really,
yeah.
yeah, and this is perfect what Jane was saying. Entertainment, it's like is your goal for entertainment? What is your goal? And just knowing that, hey, I'm to entertain people. Great. Or then you go into intellectual. What kind of message do you want to convey? Do you want to be heavy in theology? Do you want to have an agenda? I my personal opinion is probably not a good idea to have an agenda in art, but maybe you have a platform that you want to share an agenda. Do you want to bring healing to your writers? Do you want to get um, like political? Do you want to teach
Well,
something?
I'm going to push back on that agenda
Yeah.
thing. I just got done traveling to Idaho to watch a kid compete in college, and you go into the public restrooms, and they have signage inside there for how women can protect themselves if they're in an emergency situation.
Yeah.
That's very pointed. That's an agenda. If your work has an agenda, if you're writing what I want to say memorial what is the name right now?
Memoir.
memoir, or if like I can't remember who was on here who said their books were prayer motivated, that's an agenda. There's nothing wrong with that agenda.
That's true.
If you have a particular definition of what you're doing, if your brand is that tight, then it's like a sharpened tip of a pencil. You're expecting to hit a point and you're not necessarily going to be for everybody, but you'll get the people that you need.
No,
So
you're wrong, Cara. I disagree with you. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I love everyone is different. You have, I mean, we're all this is the beautiful thing about our who we are. We all have different ways of going to market. So this is beautiful. Just knowing uh, what denomination, what faith you want to share. These all come into the way that you connect with your readers.
Well,
Um,
I will clarify what
yeah.
Jesse was saying about agenda. I was on another trip a different time with my dad, and he took me into this old vintage garage that was like built in the 1920s. So it's like this huge barn, basically, with a bunch of old-timey cars in there. So there was two old, like literally vintage men in there that were sitting around drinking coffee, talking about their old vehicles. So my dad just goes right in and we start talking. Well, one of those guys found out that I was a writer, he told me that he'd written a book. He had two books that he'd written, and he told me about them. And I wish I could really remember, because if I could remember, it would be exactly what Jesse was saying not to do. This guy basically captured his ego in his writing and basically wanted everybody to stand around and read a book about his ego. That's the best way I can describe it. Basically, I was like, my whole time, my face is just, oh yeah, you wrote a book. And on the inside, I'm going, ain't gonna read that one.
All right. So we have about 10 minutes, 10 more minutes in the teaching section, and we'll
Okay.
get to questions and maybe we have a hot seat and announcements. But let's go ahead and land this plane with your
Okay.
passionate pitch. So basically, once you find your connection style, now this is where really the beauty comes in, and we'll let Kara kind of take over from here about how to actually pitch passionately and share yourself with others.
Yeah. So a lot of times when we hear the word pitch, we're thinking about the formal environment of a writer's conference where you're potentially going to pitch a project to acquisitions editor or an agent. That is a real thing. You got to work on being able to speak up about your project efficiently. And most of the time, that's a situation where business people are involved and they want to know exactly what you're working on and they don't want you to waste their time. That's actually the point of the pitch, is to get it concisely into their hands so they can decide with a good positive education if you're a good fit for them or not. But in that situation, you would have more success if you could make your personal brand a part of your specific spiel. So a lot of times when I've experienced the writers conference and people are new and nervous, or they just are following the explanations that they've found, they'll rip off a pitch for their project that's a memorized half a paragraph or something. Wave at me if you know what I'm talking about with that kind of pitch. And because we are talking about that pitch is about your book, and therefore it will have your brand in it. And if you're super rehearsed, then a lot of times, even when I've interviewed authors for different projects and stuff, my goal is to get them away from what they have rehearsed, because most of the time their brand is more interesting than that rehearsed, memorized piece of information. Not that you can't find sanctuary in what you've memorized, not that that's not part of the tools that we're using in those settings. But see the questions that we've asked on this slide. How would you share your book with your best friend? When your guard is down and you're not nervous and you're not feeling like you're pushing sales and you're not feeling like you're in an interview session, how do you talk about your book when you're excited? And then how would your best friend describe you and your book to someone else? That to me is the best question for figuring out your brand. So even when we open up for conversation, we really have Jesse's three questions about, who your audience is and all of those things that were more, I guess I felt like they're more professional. This is more social, if you can feel it. How would your best friend describe you and your books to someone else? Now, I'm assuming that your best friends actually know you're writing, because some of you introverts have your career on lockdown and you don't tell people. But assuming that they did, your sister, your mother, your best friend, whatever, how would the people who love you, who you share this stuff with, how would they describe you to their people? And that's actually very telling, because usually they'll have an interest piece about the time, something that you're good at. They'll have the genre will be mixed in there somehow, but then there will be a point of interest that made your friend bring up the book to that person. That, whatever that little bridge is, that's it. Like that's the piece that you're looking for. So on that line, you probably heard on platforms, you've probably heard of things like taglines and slogans. And a lot of times you're making a tagline or a slogan for your individual project, that particular book, but you can actually come up with those for your website or for your brand. And I sort of have one. It's the honey and spice of one writer's journey. So the honey and spice, that's where I'm going for that warm, friendly, potentially more personal, relatable feel. It doesn't really say I'm going to tell them anything special. I don't have an agenda written in there. But even when I sit down and write my newsletters, I'm putting on these lenses. What if they were interested in me in the first place and they slowed down? Why were they interested? I want to water that need inside of them. All right. Was that as clear as mud? Did that help?
All right, guys.
So I can see all the faces again.
Yeah, let's get into this then. So so I know we did a lot. And so let's take some time. We have about probably 10 minutes or so, and I'd love to hear from people anything that came out of this. And part of I want to add a little bit of the passionate pitch is that when Cara kind of shared this with me initially, um, is that it's like how can you naturally talk about your book? What are some things like for her, there's like historical and it's like what topics naturally help you talk about it? And what are you passionate about your own book? Like that and you can bring it up in conversation. So I love for people to share anything, whether that is your connection style, whether that what your friend would say about your book, or some topics that you feel like that you're naturally passionate about inside of your book. All of this is good branding, and I want to give some time to people to share. So either you raise your hand down underneath the reactions spot, or you can kind of just naturally raise your hand. I want to call on a few people.
Yeah, I want to hear. I really would like to hear what you're thinking about, what you think your brand is after this class, if you can kind of start to say it out loud. So be brave. Somebody raise their hand.
Lynn, I see you're natural raising your hand. Good. So let's go. Can you, yeah.
Yeah, two things came up. It was really, really funny. I don't know if you saw me. I started laughing because when you were talking about who's my target audience, I write for kids, and I was really drilling down on all that, and all of a sudden I realized my target audience is a nerdy 12-year-old boy. And it's really odd because, well, that's the main character in my book, but
Yeah.
it all goes together because it needs to be someone that's kind of intellectual, and also there's adventure and stuff in there too. But I just thought that was really funny because all of a sudden, and then later you said that was what
Harry Potter.
J.R. Rowling did, and I'm like, oh my! And I didn't expect that, but just coming from certain things in my life, the way that I came to the Lord and everything, kind of like those themes are in my books, kind of like, because some unconventional things. And then the last part that you were talking about, which was really fun, and I'm not saying this to, I am saying this to talk about myself. The places that you go in everyday life are places that you could talk about your books. Mm-hmm. So in my case, I go to schools. So it just came up. I was just talking to the librarian in one thing, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well," and I just wanted to use his computer or something. I said, "Well, I needed to do something for a book." And he goes, "You wrote books?" And then we got to talk about books. And so it's like if you go to the grocery, farmer's market, and you do plants, then you can bring up your book. And it's, for me, and I'm pretty introverted. It's easier if it comes across in conversation than, like the pitching kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's actually one-to-one too, because you're making an impression on that person. So I highly recommend that you have business cards in your wallet that have your face on them and potentially the cover of your book if you have one. And you should have 10 or 20 of those always on you. Go.
Can I say something about that? So I had some postcards made up that have, I think, four of my books with a QR code. And I was up wine tasting with a friend, and the gal who was serving us, I said, "Do you know anybody who likes to read?" And she said, "I like to read." So I gave her one of these postcards, and she said, "Oh, fabulous. I'm getting ready to go on a cruise. I will, see what you've got." So I said, "Well, the QR code will take you directly to Amazon to one of the books." So before we left, she turned her iPad around. She's like, "I got it."
Yep.
So
Nice.
it's really easy to do when you're not saying, "Buy my book." You're
Yeah.
saying, "Do you know anybody who likes to read?" So I
Yeah.
found that it works better than a business card because they actually have kind of like a call to action. Scan this QR code, it'll take you to Amazon to buy the
Right.
book.
Great
Yep.
ideas, Jane. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Anything from this class? Anything from sharing any aha moments, even if it's not directly on the questions. I see Dana's hand. Feel free to share and raise your hand to do so. Yeah. And great. Dana, you want to go first? And I see your hand there, Susan.
Hey, yeah, that last need to look back at my notes. I think it was the transformation that you wanted to bring. And when you were talking about it, it had to do with action in the story. And I was thinking the protagonist of my first book, Rain, early in the book, goes chasing after Elijah because he wants to see where he's going. He just
Mm,
came in, cursed the land with drought, stormed back out of the temple, and he can't believe he was so bold. So he chases after him. And the rest of the story, in one way or another, shows him chasing and running and fleeing and chasing. And I was thinking about that, how that ends with him finding God. He's chasing Elijah, who is like a surrogate of God. He
yeah.
finds God. And I was just thinking that that kind of happens in my books. They're chasing something, a person or thing that sort of represents maybe forgiveness or some other thing. And then in the end, they find it. So I guess then my themes are always the biblical themes of redemption and
Redemption.
restoration and forgiveness.
In your
And
personal life, do you have conversations with people about the things in your life
I
that have
do.
been
Yeah,
redemption, or like that to me would if how do you write redemption if you haven't experienced it? Like that would
exactly.
be
I think
Exactly.
it is very integral to who you are. When you started to say that, I thought, yeah, it sure is. It's me inside out.
And that's what we're trying to thank you for bringing that because that was one thing that we're wanting to share today, but I didn't quite get to it. But like that is part of it. Like when as I help people kind of build newsletters and various things, and even for fiction, it's like what do you want to bring into the world? And for you, you love redemption. You love this, these things, right? And so your book is about that, but you're probably also you sharing about a normal life. It's like these pieces, and they say the same thing about pastors too. There's one message, every like my brother's a pastor. He's like, I only have one message, God's a good dad. It's like because he just loves that God's a good dad, and he just tells that thousand different ways. And I feel that's kind of how we are as well as when we kind of hone into what do we actually love. You love the redemption of God and you love the forgiveness and the journey. And so that's your passion of your life, which is so cool. And you're going to write about that and you're going to share, you live that message. And then when you find that, then you're going to just shout it from the rooftops. So
Yeah.
well, and there's this thing that happens when we start to hear about the marketing things, platform and branding and this and that. We always go to the a measuring stick of sales, and sales is real. Sales is what we all want. I felt like the Holy Spirit gave me the verse, "Cast your bread upon the water; you never know where it comes back to you." Really early in my career, and so whenever the thoughts of income and increased sales is like bigger than it should be, I almost get in a picture in my imagination of taking that thing and throwing it out on the water because I don't know. I throw my projects, I throw my opportunities, I throw my conversations about my stories, I throw it all out on the water. And then the Lord gets to bring it back to me. And if He brings it back to me in the form of dinero in my bank account, That's up to him. That's hands off to me. Because you never know, what if the entire purpose of the Lord drawing your heart to write and spend all that time in your chair is for one conversation that you have not had yet? What if it's for one person, an old high school chum that you bump into in the grocery store who knew you when you were embarrassing, and yet you're still supposed to have the conversation with them? What if that, when you stand before God and he tells you, shows you what, I always use the word ripple and it hits Jesse's book title down there. What if he shows you the ripple effect of all the things that you're doing and it's all for one movement of one person in a certain direction?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, some books are different. Julie Bon Blanc, she has the deepest of deep. In fact, when I don't remember your name, the one who was talking about writing for entertainment, is it you, Jane? Was that you? Yeah. When I wrestled with that, I started in the industry for myself. When I actually came out and was serious, it was 2012, 2013. And there was a huge push at that time that Christian fiction wasn't gritty enough. It wasn't raw enough. It wasn't writing about real issues enough. It was a little bit picture perfect, whatever. And there was a huge push, and a lot of the big publishing houses started to only take that kind because they were really trying to make an honest effort towards fixing that. And they have. Our Christian fiction industry has a plethora of good representation on real good, gritty, raw stuff these days. But for me, what's my brand? Hope, encouragement, and escapism. I don't want to write the gritty crap. I don't. I want to run away from it and hide myself. I have enough real life friends whose lives are torn up and difficult. I personally want to write the stuff that I enjoy. So, but I had to wrestle with that because it was an industry push. And so I'm just saying that you might have to wrestle with your brand for a little while and get this down. But you never know. The more you define what that is, the more that you can recognize it, then you can release the bread upon the water and wait to see what the Lord does and how he does it, because you never see it coming. Like, it's like that lady that read the 4 books to her sister. I didn't see that coming, and it was a memorial. My books have become a memorial with her and her sister. That's a pretty powerful thing. And at the same time, your stuff has a thumbprint. The thumbprint of you in your work is meant to be pressed on somebody else. But just like a pianist or even you as a writer, you didn't get to count yourself as an author until you counted yourself as an author and you presented yourself to someone else and someone else read your work. That's when you went from being a creative to an actual writer author, is when you recognize it yourself. And that's kind of what brand is. When you embrace your lens in this life fully and even get practice at it and maybe even get it wrong. There's no perfection here. You might get it wrong a few times. Who cares? Keep swinging the bat. But when you get it right and you get to stretch out into your giftings and come forward a little bit more, then the opportunities the Lord brings to you are going to be just his. And it might only ever be one-on-one, like what some of you guys were saying. And it might come through something that seems so silly because it's like the research or something that you, like I said, pay attention to your rabbit holes, what you go for when you're interested in something.
Awesome. Well said. So let's end with Susan, and then we have Jane, and you have something with Patricia, and then we have some announcements. And yeah, this has been great. So let's go ahead and Susan, you want to share kind of a last and we might have some time for more little questions to the end if we have time. But this has been good. This has been good.
Well, I had kind of gone back and forth as to whether I was coming tonight. But then I'm looking at the word branding and I'm like, yeah, I need help with that because I have no idea what my brand is. And so I'm watching and I'm, taking all these notes and listening to everybody talk. And I kept thinking, okay, well, it could be this and it could be this, it could be this. And then Jesse, I think you said, no, maybe it was Cara who said, you can actually write a tagline for your brand.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like it hit me because my favorite saying, it's been the theme of my life, is never lose hope.
Yes.
Come on.
And all of a sudden I went,
yes.
Why is this so hard? That's my brand.
Yeah.
And that should make all your social media so much easier because that's the thing. It's going to be the seed. Even if you're showing a picture of your pets or your grandbabies or something else.
But what's funny is like, that's in everything. It's
Yeah.
part of everything I do.
It's your
It's part of
message.
everything I
That's
write.
so good.
And but I didn't think of it as my brand.
Hmm. That's why Jim says you don't necessarily you discover your brand. You don't choose it, you discover it. And this is what's beautiful is that this is thank you for sharing that, Susan, because that is really comes down to the heart is that we can talk, we talk a lot, we share a lot of ideas. But at the end of the day, this is between you and the Lord
Mhm.
on that aha moment. And all these questions, all these things just get you to try to dig deeper into that aha moment. And so thank you for sharing that, Susan. I see that Patricia walked away, but oh, you're back. So, Jane, do you want to go ahead and kind of do that thing and sharing
Do
with
the
Patricia?
thing. Do
Yeah.
the thing. Well, Patricia and I had a email conversation because she was going to do the hot seat and then changed her mind and then changed her mind again, but kind of different than that. So, Patricia, you had wanted to share a couple things about branding that I think maybe would fit in. So, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to share that project that I was needing some help moving forward, and then I thought I want to enter it. So I don't think that would have been good to put it on here. So I'm going to share my screen. Linda Heath, who is in here, and I have worked on her branding, and so it's going to be a joint effort here. I'm going to share some of the things that we started with, and she said to do a dramatic change in her branding and her goal, and I want to show her website that she's got started and with some of the graphics. And so if I could share my screen, y'all can see some of the things, and she can share. She's probably got she and I have been chatting quietly here. Let's see, I'll try to send a request there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we have a few minutes. We have some announcements, but yeah, if you do it in like maybe 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. And we'll get my taxes down out of here. There we go. Okay, so we started out, she had two ideas. One was for Mama Sauerkraut, and it's still kind of the same colors, but I'll let her talk about that. A few different coloring, and here was the start of her writing with those same colors, textures,
Yeah.
along with this. And she can share a little bit. We did kind of a signature logo and this pen that's in several different colors. But her website, if I can pull it up here, you can see some of those same colors she's chosen in her background and a different font here. And here's her homepage. And like here's her writing page with her blog bits. And she's got 2 or 3 different fonts here. And now she can go ahead and take it away and say what she's
Yeah, so
wrestling with.
curious. So yeah, Linda, what have you found as like this is beautiful. Like what have you found from your colors and what does that portray for you, Linda? Yeah, like your style and your feelings and your brand, yeah.
Well, what I really wanted to portray was being encouraging and supportive. And originally, the idea with the Mama Sauerkraut was going to be more food oriented.
Hmm.
And just because of what I've been through in this last year, I can't even eat sauerkraut now. So
Oh no.
it's like, Lord, what am I going to do? I can't be Mama Sauerkraut anymore. And so I had to do this pivot, and I'm not, I'm still kind of trying to figure out where I'm going, but I really felt like the emphasis on just writing in general was important. And so
Mhm.
I decided to go with just the emphasis on the Linda Heath scribe. But
Hmm.
I wanted to keep the same colors because those are colors that I love, and they're colors that I think are soothing and encouraging colors. And I really think that my whole underlying, now that this was really helpful in really bringing into focus, I think, um, the transformation. So my writing is meant to encourage people to go deeper in
Mm.
their faith and to recognize the goodness of God and to recognize how much they are loved. And so that's pretty much the focus of the blog posts that I've done so far, and the poetry I write and
Yeah.
all of that. I don't have a book. Um, I know that the Lord is telling me to write a book, and I'm still sorting that out because He said specifically the food book, and I'm like, I don't even know where to start on that right now
Yeah.
because
I know
um
that it sounds like you're in a transition in your brand, and maybe your brand will be bigger than it'll be both somehow. And even when you talk about Mama Sauerkraut, everything about sauerkraut is fermenting, which fermenting is soaking in
Takes a
something,
while.
soaking in
Mhm.
wisdom. So to me, it does cross over and can be both if you want it to be. And also, it's eye catching and ear catching. Mama Sauerkraut makes you kind of smile just hearing it, right? And
mhm.
I do like your name itself is my favorite part of your brand. Linda Heath is a warm, friendly sound. Not everybody's name has a welcome to it, but yours does. And so, and actually, that was something that was said to me early on, is that your name is your brand. And so to be mindful to keep your name up front, even if you're, I have a writer, do you guys know Kate Breslin? She's a buddy of mine and has been, and she's kind of a bigger author if you want to rank and file, which we don't, but she was nervous to have personal information out there. She wants to be super conservative. She's a little bit formal in her approach to her walk with the Lord, and she wants to be real honoring to the Lord. And so when she writes her stuff, that is her. So she had to learn how to do brand where you can talk warm and open about something, but it's not personal. It's not actually giving away any of your private business. And so
Hmm.
and that's what I said about learning your brand and what it's not. Like she writes books about World War I and World War II, so she actually studies and learns a ton about, I'm going to get it wrong, Auschwitz. Like that's the wrong
That's
way
what
of
it's,
saying.
yeah.
Yeah, but so she's got these heavy, heavy topics. But when she's talking to her newsletter, she's usually got a little scripture meditation, a place of warmth that she's taken a picture of that you would want to go to read and to be relaxed. She's almost creating an oasis also, but her oasis is very uh, I want to say professional, but professional makes it sound like business, like you're going to go talk to your accountant. But she is formal. Like, do you guys know what I mean? Like some churches are kind of comfortable, casual, and some are like liturgical. But her brand is a little bit like that. So you get to decide. She wants to be highly formal in her brand, even though she wants to be warm and friendly. So
Yep.
that's and even to think about your favorite authors, if you think about them, what do you think about their brand? See if you can define someone else's brand. That can help you find yours.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing there, Linda. Thank you for sharing, Patricia. I'm going to stop the sharing now. We have about 5 minutes left. Hopefully this has been good for you guys. I know that it's been, again, a little bit of a across the board, but I'm going to pass it over to Julie for some announcements, and then we can do some prayer and, yeah, and end today. And I really do appreciate you guys coming. Hopefully this has been helpful. So,
All
Julie.
right. Yeah, don't go away. Stay for just a couple more minutes. Thank you for coming, everybody. That was very insightful. You guys, you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple announcements, and that is CCW does have some job positions up and coming. Well, some are open now and some are open in the fall. So in the next few days, I will be posting a blog post and I'll attach it to Facebook so you can read it on what is open, the duties. We need people. We need people. We always need people because people rotate, right? And they need to take a break. So it'd be great if you would look at that. Please come to our online conference on the 8th of March. It's going to be really fun. There's some great speakers, including Janet, who's with us tonight, and Stephen James, and some other great people. A lot of opportunity. There is also the opportunity to meet with editors, with publishers, and with mentors. And Jane Daly will be there for her publisher as well. So it's a great opportunity. There are a couple new things about summer conference that you are going to hear from me tonight and nobody else knows yet. So no, I'm kidding. You don't have to be about it. But not only are we having our summer conference at Canby Grove, but I've heard a rumor from a good source today, two of them, that we also are going to have a summer writers retreat where you can go off into the wild and just write, and connect with other CCW people and spend that time connecting and fellowshipping and writing. In addition, we are looking at bringing back the paid critique feature where you can actually send a huge chunk, of your work into the professionals and get that critiqued and get valuable feedback. So please consider the Cascade contest. Entries are due by February 15th. But again, this is the only contest that will give you, feedback from 3 professional judges who will get that on your piece, as well as recognition at the award ceremony, which is usually which is at the summer conference in Canby. Canby Grove will be June 22nd to June 25th. So if you've not registered for those things, we do need to get your numbers in so we know how many we're dealing with. But we'd be really happy to see you. Oh, and Spring Conference Online will also have networking time. So you will actually be at times placed into breakout rooms with other people, depending how we have, where you can introduce yourself and your work and make writing friends. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So please join us.
Yes.
Thank you, Julie, for all your hard work.
Yes, of
Yeah,
course.
thank you, Julie.
Yeah, I have a great team. Trust me, I don't do it all.
Yeah, so I put the links in the chat there for the contest. You
Oh,
guys
thanks.
can definitely come to that. We have 2 more weeks left. It's very valuable, and yeah, and the spring conference, and also next month our member circle is going to be the amazing Taylor Bennett again. She is just a young, amazing, wise person. She's going to be sharing about not just Pinterest. I know she shared about Pinterest in the past, and she'll be sharing about Pinterest again, but also more of a social media kind of a how to go to market kind of thing as well. So we're kind of working on that as well. That's going to be on February 22nd, and so you'll see it in this month's member circle. And we're working on that newsletter right now. Get your member news in, and yeah, so we're at the end of time. So let's pray us out. And so, Kim, are you kind of on the call? So thank you, Kim, for being here. That you're amazing. Kim she's now taking over. You want to share a little bit about kind of what you're doing now, Kim, of you're taking over?
Oh, I'm just heading the prayer team. I wouldn't call it taking over. I just coordinate all these amazing prayer people.
In a good way. Yeah, you're an amazing coordinator, and we're just happy to have you take that lead on that. So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
pray us out, and we thanks you for everybody being here. So.
Father, how lovely it is that you join us together like this. And Lord, we just want to thank you for the insights that Cara has given us to really recognize and dig deeper into what our brand is and to recognize it as a thumbprint
Mhm.
on our actual, almost our souls, what we breathe into our writing. And Father, I just lift up each person here today and each person that participates in Cascade Christian Writers. Help us to discern that heart message and relish it, enjoy it, enlarge upon it, and walk in it with you. And Father, I ask your protection, your blessing, your encouragement for all of our writers, especially those here this evening. And Father, as we go forth, give us that clarity in writing, that we might just breathe into others' lives those messages of hope, encouragement, direction, clarification, insight, all those beautiful things you're working through these writers. And I ask you to bless the work of their hands, bless the words of their mouths and their pens, and open up wide doors of effective ministry for each and every one. We bless you in Christ Jesus. Amen.
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 Amen. Amen. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody. You're amazing. Go change the world.
We'll
Go.
see you in March at the conference. The
Yes.
one.
This was great. Thank you.
Thank
Welcome. Have a
you.
good one. Thank you, everybody. All righty.